Hola community, here we are. It's Blender Today 59. We're here together for another week of updates. It's Blender Today or Blender Tuesday, I would say. Please give me your thumbs up if the audio and everything is okay so I don't have to worry about it later and just can focus on the actual news. There is plenty of news actually. It's good to do it one day later because there is a very good one that was added today that will it will make the show a lot better. So if you haven't seen it, by the way, today I uploaded another video on the Blender Developers YouTube channel that you can check out if you go to the Blender Developers YouTube channel, YouTube/Blender Developers. You also link it all over the place. But it's a summary of what happened. It's basically a thing. It's so weird to see myself here. But thank you for the thumbs up. But it's a summary of what happened during the homestretch week. I already mentioned this a few times here in this channel and in these live streams, but it's a nice 6-minute video that will give you a bit more of an insight and actual videos and pictures of what happened this week. So that week. So with that being said, let's move on to the news. This week we have especially updates on the viewport, on the UI fixes, and there is some really good things coming up for the outliner, so that is pretty nice. All right, looking very good today. You think I'm feeling a bit under the weather, so sorry if my energy is not as matching the awesomeness of the things that we're gonna see today. There's a list already being worked on the DevTalk forums, but I have my own list, which is this basically with a few other things that I added today. So we get together. We get them together and we're gonna talk about it. So first thing, I just uploaded Blender, and let's continue. It took me like 3 minutes to get, or less, to get straight to the news. I'm getting. I hope I'm getting better at this. So the UI changes, they're mainly they're like part of this wrap up of 2.8. Try to get the essential features or the big aspects of Blender 2.8 like polished, you know, something that it gets that it gets people like doesn't feel like it's rushed or it was like not well thought through. So the top bar was one of the big things that was part of Blender 2.8. It was implemented, it was tweaked, there were more options were added, and the concept of having the top bar in the top was nice. It worked really well. For example, when you're doing 2D painting, it's fantastic. You can just draw and you have all the settings here. Or when you're also sculpting, it proves to be really handy. And you still need some of the tool settings available on the sidebar. So it's a mix of both. But now you have duplicated content sometimes here in the top bar. So the issue was that many, or if not most, of the tools do not really have a lot of settings. They are like a few, like measure doesn't have anything, and in edit mode some of them like bevel has a few, but like most of them don't really have more than a few options. So having a whole top bar for just those few settings wasn't really it's a good use of space. So now the top bar is gonna be part of the editor where the active tool is being used. In the default layout is a 3D viewport. So when you this is not the final version, it's still worked on a branch, but the way it works now is a bit of, you get a bit of the how it's gonna look. The top bar, as you can see, now doesn't go all the way from left to the right, and now you have a bit more space, vertical space, for the outliner usually in the default layout, and all the settings are going to be shown in the viewport. There is also the settings for the pivot point, the transform orientations. They're all now in the top bar because they when there is an active tool, there is room for it, so it kind of makes some room for it. So good to see that everybody's having fun with everything seems to be okay. The offset is outcome is 2 pixels offset. Speak of nitpicking, uh, but I'm gonna fix it. I'll see if I can continue the show with it with that in my mind. The another thing that is gonna change, it's not right now on 2.9, but it's gonna change soon. It's in a branch. It's called temp top bar UI branch, and it contains basically this changes plus the settings for the tool settings are gonna be here on the side. They're gonna be on a panel. Maybe they could be on a tab. I think they should be on a tab because they will make them a bit more of a first-class citizen instead of just being somewhere here. We have too many panels in this that they're not even related, right? The transform only shows active object settings as opposed to view, which is part of the view. 3D cursor, this could be in a panel somewhere, like popover, or maybe on the 3D cursor tool. So there is a few things that need to be thought through, and also that the top settings, like these ones, are gonna be shown, like the top bar is gonna be shown automatically per workspace for sculpting, for painting, texture painting, or grease pencil, where they are mostly used most of the time. Right now, there is an easier way to hide the top bar. You can just right click and you can do show tool settings. It's gonna hide them. Then you can do if you bring it back, there you go, show tool settings. You know, I didn't get the right click of the toolbar when clicking here in this empty space, because that's another feature that I'm going to talk about now. It's awesome. Just let me continue with this. You can also toggle the header and the menus from here. Right click on the either the top bar or the header between the buttons or close to the buttons, because now, ladies and gentlemen, a fix was done today, a few days ago, that is gonna make life a lot easier. It's a fix, it's not a feature. It's the empty space in the regions, say toolbar or the sidebar or the header even, it's not gonna steal your clicks anymore. So it was very normal to see, like even I had it, like just you don't realize sometimes that maybe the sidebar was a bit too wide, so you were modeling something here and then you try to like pan with the mouse, like middle clicking in this area, and that wouldn't work because the click will be absorbed by the empty space of the sidebar. But now those clicks are ignored. The area where you can click is defined by whatever is visible, basically. There is one little glitch that I realized that today, but I already reported it, that if you like minimize the panels, and you will still see, like, it doesn't update this line, like the cursor here, to make it smaller. But if you hide and unhide, then it does. Then you don't get the 2D cursor to like split it or to like resize. You don't get it anymore unless you actually are in somewhere where you can see the panels. Very nice feature. Well, feature fix, I think. It also works for the header. So if you're up here, you can still click around, and it's super nice. The same for this. It's a feature that affects every region. So in every region, in the editors that have region overlap enabled. If I'm not wrong, maybe I am. Probably I am. I'm not a developer. But yeah, let's continue. Oof, everything okay? I feel like I'm talking a bit too much, but maybe it's because I'm getting sick. Let's move on with more UI updates. This is a small one. The collection visibility, it was a pop over here in the header, but it wasn't really used that much, and then you have to click and then you wouldn't see at a glance. So it was decided they will be moved to a panel here on the sidebar. So the popover is now moved there. If you like it the other way, it's a fairly easy thing to change back, because popovers, these guys, are basically just panels that behave like a popover, like a drop down, but internally there's just panels, so you can register it in a different way and it will just should work. And everything okay? We want the transform button back. Transform? Oh, it's a you can yeah, you could, it would be nice to shift click and then you enable multiple of them, but the transform tool is gone because now you can have them enabled all the time regardless of the tool that you have in. I see you more than I see my mom. And I actually also see you more often than I see my mom. That's bad. We should see our moms more often. Well, we can. Blendrig is available for everyone. Now, what a change of topic from moms to Blendrig. It's one thing that I forgot to mention last week. It's not really related directly to Blender, but it kind of is. Blendrig is a oops, I got the wrong address. Blender is a rigging system that is free for everyone. It's hosted on the Blender cloud, but you can download it. It's like actually available for everyone. It's been updated for 2.8, so yeah, you can now just go and get it. It's also on GitLab, so yeah, just a small reminder that I saw somewhere on my notes. So let's move on with more Blender stuff. Colored icons, that's coming. It's in the video that I just posted. It's also common. There is a task already, and it's high priority, so it means it's gonna be tackled but as soon as possible. More news is the edit mode. Yes, edit mode. Remember? Have you been a fan or not? Are you part of the thick edges team? There has been a lot of discussions lately, but not lately, since it was added basically on the thickness of the edges in edge selection mode. It was decided long time ago how can we tell apart the vertex selection, edge selection, and face selection modes. The decision was basically just use the opacity of your component. So if you have the vertices, it means that you are in vertex select mode. If you don't see the vertices but you see the edges darker, then it means that you are now in edge selection mode, and the faces are gonna dim slightly the edges, but the faces are gonna be a lot more visible. So for example, if I switch, you see the faces are not as orange or as dark as, like, it's just the opacity. You can also change it in the theme as the other modes. What happens if you combine them? Well, they just combine. You get everything. You get dark edges, vertices, and dark faces. So that way you know that it's like super. You're in all of the modes together. So let me know what you think about it. This one. Then another option that is kind of similar to the. It was done in the same time as hiding and unhiding with the right click, the show header, show tool settings, and the show menus. It's an option. It's in the view settings to change the adjust last operation. What's that? Well, this floating panel that appears at the bottom, it's not really floating, it's like kind of stuck there, but this panel is enabled by default, but a lot of people were not a big fan of it. It's supposed to replace the or be coupled with the F6 in Blender 2.7. This option. This one was removed from Blender 2.8. It was simplified. Basically, this one shows all of the settings. In 2.8, it was simplified and it was put to the corner so people can see it a bit more often. But a lot of people, like especially advanced users, are not really using it, or they are used to the shortcut. So what changed is that you can now disable it. You can just adjust last operation. You can hide it. You can also now press F9. It's a new shortcut. It's not F6, because F6 would be in the middle of 4 empty keys. F5, 6, 7, and 8, they're empty. They don't have any keys, any action attached to them, because the idea with 2.8 is that you add your own shortcuts, or that add-ons can have their own shortcuts. In 2.7, the add-ons have to fight with Blender's internal shortcuts. There was like a very few keys free. One of them was the Q key, and it was used by like a ton of add-ons. So now there are more keys free, so they can fight for the best ones. So the do I need to learn all the new shortcuts for 2.8? No, you don't have to. There is a in the splash screen, there is a, when you first start Blender, or in the user settings in keymap, you can change to Blender 2.7. That would make it the same. It's basically Blender 2.7 keymap. Or you can use the industry compatible keymap. The Blender keymap in 2.8 is pretty much the 2.7 keymap without many of them removed. There are a few changes like F2, F4, all of these, mainly on the F keys. Then also like A for deselect. You can still do tap A twice to deselect things, or A or tap once for selection. But it's pretty much similar. It's not like still Blender. Underneath its core, still Blender. The last thing that I wanted to mention regarding the UI is mainly about the file browsing. This is a feature that was actually, I saved the link because I wanted to give a shout out to the developer from the community. It's a feature that was added from a developer. One of you watching this, I hope. Sharan Ranjit, he made this feature. It was actually a fix, maybe it's more like a fix, that the file browser didn't remember the type of view that you were in. So maybe if you were watching it as a thumbnail and then you close the file browser and open it again, it will go back to detailed view, for example. Now it remembers. So very nice. For thank you, Rajit, for taking a look at it. Wait, did I say your name right? I did, I think. Yaran Rajit, yes. For taking a look at these things. It's very nice. So have people like making Blender, trying to make it better with those little things that help quality of life kind of things. Smoke and fire in Eevee, it's already possible. Smoke is actually very good. Actually, Spring Open Movie Project had a bit of smoke. Most of it is cycles, but there is a few parts where it's just basically easier and faster to make it in Eevee, or even in the Workbench engine. All right, let's move on. The let's talk about a few more hefty things in the viewport. There's a new way of seeing the new way. Yeah, okay, let's call it a new way. A new feature that allows you to see vertex paint, vertex colors, even if you are not in vertex paint color. So the way Blender 2.7 did it didn't give you many options. So if you were painting, for example, you're trying to remember how this works. Okay, if you're painting something with the vertex colors, then there was really not a way to like have your texture on top and it will be multiplied on top. Then you really didn't have an option to you could either see it completely texture completely, or with the overlay on top. So sometimes I will have to make a dummy vertex paint to put on top that it was always white and it wouldn't multiply. It was very confusing. In 2.8 there was no way to see the vertex paint when you were not in vertex paint mode. Why would you want to see it? Well, say you actually were just painting a little bit on your mesh, right? You're painting a little bit, then you will see the vertex paint. Then you go to object mode, you don't see it. Seeing the vertex paint has many uses. Sometimes you use it for masking, for example, for using it inside of a material, or also you would use it in dynamic paint. And the fact that it works now is more like a side effect, but there's more changes coming for, especially for dynamic paint, because it still needs to be seen. The weight paint needs to be seen, and other modes also need to be seen there. So this new way of seeing it is in the shading popover. You can see single object, vertex, and then material random texture. So it's same as before. Now there is, instead of being one row that it was hard to read, now it's 2 rows, because I can connect it with another feature that was added this week that maybe is interesting if you're making add-ons. Is that when the enums, with the expanded enums, when this list becomes too big and you're using a grid column, now Blender will automatically make it look like this, make it like 2 lines, instead of being like trying to collapse everything and just adding dots at the end of the words because it doesn't fit. Now it's a bit smarter if you use flow column or grid column, I think. It's yeah. So it's a feature inside of a feature that I wanted to explain, but actually this one is better to see it if you have, for example, if you have a nice plane, no? For example, you have it subdivided a few times, and you have a nice plane with a, do you guys see it? Yes. For example, you have this guy with a bunch of particles. So you have someone like that. And if you're using this particle system for, say, dynamic paint, maybe add a little canvas over here, little canvas. You can have a big canvas, but yeah. And this one, you make it a brush, and the brush, instead of using the mesh, is using the particle system. Then here, for example, you should see the color of the texture of the vertex paint. So now, thanks to this new mode, you can choose vertex and you can actually see what's going on, even if you're not in vertex paint mode. So that's awesome. And it's also gonna come for the other modes, for the not for waves, but for weight. Also, you can see it. And I always like to see the weight effect, the waves effect in the awesome dynamic paint, which is coming back. It's now a bit broken because of this, because of the UI stuff, the interface, but it's gonna come back. Something that came back though, and it was brought back, it was missing feature, is the analysis of the mesh analysis stuff. For example, if you have a messy mesh, and if you're in edit mode, in the overlay settings, you could have, for example, the mesh analysis options. These options were actually, they were not working before, and they should be back, and maybe not in this mode. I have to check it out, or maybe the because sometimes I work with patches, and the patches are are on my local version, but it's coming back. Just sleep well. It's gonna come back. I should have tested this, and I tested it with a patch. It's coming back. It's mainly used for 3D printing. When you're actually doing 3D printing, you will see you would use it really often. For example, if your mesh is too thin for the 3D printer, or it has overhanging areas that could need some support for 3D printing. So yes, that it's back. And another option, yes, okay, let's see. This is an option for an option. So you see this grid, and you see this. How do we call this thing? We call it a grid in Blender, right? It's always been the grid. But if I was a big and rich company, I will say, introducing a new feature exclusive for Blender 2.8 called floor. What is the floor? Well, it's a grid, basically. It's just the grid now got split in 2 parts, so you can disable the floor, and then you won't see the grid, this grid, basically, the 3D grid. And then when you go to the ortho view, like the top, the left, right, you will see the grid. This is what happened in Blender 2.7. There was a way where you could just hide the grid under display, grid floor, and then you would there was no way to hide it in the ortho mode. It was very annoying sometimes just to not be able to hide this thing. So now you can. It's split in two. So if you hide the grid, it's gonna go away in the in the ortho view, and then if you show the floor, it's gonna show only in the 3D view. So pretty nice. Flour. Yes, we got flour to make a cake. Hey, why is it grayed out? Or it's grayed out in non-ortho view. Interesting. All right. Does the outliner have a vertical scroll bar yet? It does when you need it. It doesn't when you don't. It's AI. No, it's not AI. All right, let's continue. I already talked about the UI stuff. Option to toggle last adjustment. Yes. Okay, minor things. These options that I show you how to show the header and the menus and the tool settings, they are now toggled. This is more like internal thing that changed, but before, if you are making add-ons and you were using these settings, and there's a change in the API because the regions, they all had like special code for each editor, which was a bit overkill. Now there is a more global way of changing it basically. So look up the API changes for that. So now there are toggles. You can actually see here, and you can click on the toggles, and it has a checkbox, which makes more sense. Then oh, this one is great, and I saved the link because you need to see the pictures of before and after. This is a fix that it's crazy, how like I didn't notice it before, how badly it was. So I don't know if you guys get to see, I hope you do, like the numbers in the graph editors, in the 2D views, basically the numbers, they were so misaligned. So basically this is frame, so 150. So here, for example, this is frame 0, like the 0 in the y-axis, and it's offset by 1. Then this is actually 2. This is 1, 2, 3, 4. They're completely wrong. Now they are not. So you will see here, if I make it the same height, same size, you will see the difference, that before it was misaligned, and now you'll see that 0 actually starts there, down there, 2, 4, and 6. So it was insane. How can you, like, I think maybe I've noticed in the past, but I never really paid attention. So now this change makes it more accurate. The vertical bar is now aligned. It's hard to see it here in the picture, but you should check it out. Now everything, you can trust the numbers on the side, on the vertical scroll bars now. So thank you, Jack Luke, for fixing it. Then some miscellaneous changes. I think that's all for the UI, viewport, and manual UI settings. The miscellaneous changes. Who loves missing textures or images packed when you are like missing data on your pack images? I don't think anyone misses that. There was a bug, you could say, in Blender, that if you had images with floating point values, for example, like 16-bit, 32-bit, then they on save, they will be saved as regular images and you will lose data. Now the images will be saved as OpenEXR, so they're built in Blender. This change looks like something small. Basically now the packing of images supports OpenEXR and PNG, or PNG, either two. And then you can pack your multi-layer renders, for example, you can pack them inside Blender, which something wasn't possible before, and you're not gonna lose any data. So great props about that to Brecht for fixing this issue. And I was looking at the commits, and before that commit of just saving an image, packing an image, there were like 4 other commits about the saving of an image, splitting it from the operator to making it reusable, and then like so much refactor had to go into that. It makes me think, it's like, yeah, sometimes you think of a feature that is like, why can I pack my OpenEXR images? And yeah, basically it took a lot more work. So it's just funny to think about those things. All right. Or the linked files, yes. Do you mean inside of a project? Yes, project or linked as well. Like whatever images you have. Well, no, the linked ones will stay linked, but the ones that are packed inside of your blend file. That's what I mean. Sorry if I'm mixing words. I've been kind of sick, so I have a sip of tea today. And I'm using a render for Blender internal. Blender internal for the win. Let's continue. The this is a small one, but the auto-saving of blend files in, so for example, if you go to your temp folder, you will see that there is a like the names. This is very, very internal stuff. The auto-saving of files in Blender, the way I did it before, it was basically, if your blend file, for example, I open this blend file and I make my awesome project. If I don't save this, Blender will automatically save it. It always saves it every 2 minutes. So that's why when people say that I lost my project, it doesn't really, you don't really lose it. Blender saves it even if you don't ask to, every 2 minutes by default. This file will be saved with the name of the, like if you didn't set a name, Blender will pick the name of the process, the number of the process of your computer, which I believe, like I think you can see it on Windows on the list of processes that are running, but on Linux you can. It's just basically you just run top, for example, and then you should see Blender. It has the process 23,000 something, for example. Then this number will be the name of the blend file, underscore autosave. It was great, but it happens that if the file has a name, like for example this one, I called it untitled, then Blender will call it untitled underscore autosave, which is great because it means that it will save it. It will save it with the the name that I chose, like graph editor colors. It will save it, and then it will add autosave to it. The issue is that if you have 2 Blender running with the same blend file open and you are making changes, okay, you're actually looking for trouble if you're doing that same blend file in 2 different blenders, auto-saving changes, they could conflict. And there was yeah, they could conflict basically because Blender Shell was using the name and the autosave part. But now this is the old name. The new name contains the name plus the process number, like your Blender that you're running, underscore autosave. So there shouldn't be any issue with 2 blend files with the same file autosaving on the same folder. Did I explain that right? I think it took me 2 hours to explain. You need to use htop, not top on Linux. Yeah, I use both. I use both. I like htop. It just has a bunch of colors and settings and much prettier, but yeah, usually, yeah, Linux stuff. There's always a better thing. I bet there was someone that says, no, but there is this one version that is the indie. No one knows about it. It's called ftop, or no, I don't know. No, hey, that's camera stuff. All right, let's continue. Before I continue with the questions, by the way, are you guys asking questions on Blender.Today, the community? You remember, you know that these live streams are actually around the Blender community? You should check it out. There is here UI updates. There is 27 comments. If you haven't asked your question, please go there. I hope I can answer most of them. But yes, how about a Mac? It's probably the same. A Mac is Unix, and under the hood they use the same, not the same, but similar concept. So I bet they're using the same. or it works in the same. Thumbnail of your texture in texture node. The texture, well, the node system is gonna be refactored for all that is yeah, most of the functions, for example, the everything node is gonna tackle many of those issues. But for example, if you go to the code blog, you will see in the module teams blog post, you will see that there is people assigned to every section of Blender, and you'll see that some sections have been marked as end of life, basically. So what does it mean? For example, particles and hair, fluids and smoke, they are end of life at the moment because they're going to be replaced for something else. In this case, fluid and smoke, as it is right now, the system that is right now, if you report a bug, like a bug in the way the physics work for smoke simulation, it might not be fixed because it will be replaced with MantaFlow, like for good. MantaFlow is going to be the way of doing fluids and smoke. So yeah, that's for example the case with the texture, the nodes and the texture editor. So if you go to texture painting, no, texture nodes, end of life is going to be replaced with shading nodes, and that's going to bring about a lot more features. But yeah, just to answer that one. And I think, okay, a few more features. The one key map improvement in the graph editor, you can now use the shortcuts Control Home and Control End to set the start frame and the end frame of your animation. So you don't have to go to the timeline to do it. You can do it from the graph editor, which is pretty handy. Sometimes you don't have the timeline, you only have the graph editor. So now all the animation editors should have the same shortcut for that. The other, maybe that shortcut should work everywhere, right? Like, who's gonna use Control Home for, like, Control Home centers the view, Home centers the view, Control Home, what do we do? Interesting. All right, maybe we can just use it globally. And that is all. The outliner, by the way, the patch that is being worked on and is not yet in Blender, unless they added it like now. No, it's under review. It will make it so you can see the hierarchy on the outliner. So like the way you did it in Blender 2.7, where you can see if an object is parented to another object, or if the parent or the object is children of another object, then that you will be able to see it in the outliner in 2.8. That's something that people were really requesting. So yes, it's going to be added and is under review. And I think that it's all for now. There is a few changes in the spline IK. This one I can't show it right now, but basically you can now change the length of the bones in Y. Yes, there is news for riggers. In spline IK you can change the length of the bones, and B bones you can also scale in and out properties into X and Y values, so you can do crazy things. And something I didn't show last week is there is a very nice GIF showing a huge improvement in the way B bones worked. It was already added. I just forgot to mention it last week. But this is how B bones used to work and how they used to work in 2.7 and before. The B bones, if you don't know, are the bones that you can split into many parts and that you can twist them at the beginning and at the end. And it helps you to reduce the number of bones. Usually you can have crazy formations with less bones, and especially for the spine is very cool. But yeah, I had some issues. Now look at this. Ugly, not ugly. Ugly, not ugly. 2.7, 2.8. RTX off, RTX on. Super nice. Okay, let's continue with let's start with the questions actually. Before you guys, wow, you added 10 questions in like no time. All right, so UI updates. Yes, I'm here in the right place. Let me have a sip of tea while I read. Stretch. The V-Bones improvements gave me a moment of insane joy. Yes, sorry, I usually forget some of those features about like rigging, but they're super important and they are, maybe this is easier to read. Yes, they're super important to have them. So I will do an effort to show them more. Caetano asks, hi Pablo, me and others would like to make graphical builds, but the wiki instructions for static linked libraries on Linux aren't clear. Could someone add some details into this part? I will ask the developers to add more details. If you go to the graphical, the homepage, I'm linking to the, probably you're talking about this. Yeah, I'm linking to the Blender wiki where you can see how to build Blender and how to do it statically for Linux, this part. If this process is not working, then you could ask for help also in the dev talk forums here in compiling Blender, building Blender, and here you could ask about it. And if not, then we can poke the developer. Feel free to poke the developers there. It's some things we have to fix. And especially now that so many people are uploading things to graphical, like there's like MantaFlow, UV Slim algorithm, so for the nice UV wrapping. So yeah, many things. Great job, community. You're awesome. Alex asks, is it possible to have an industry standard axis option, x-axis, y-axis up? A single switch in preferences. Yes, a single switch I guess could be possible. It sounds so much work. Like we had to change how all the whole axes are. I'm not a developer, but I can imagine that is a huge amount of work for not so much benefit in a way, because yeah, it's not industry standard. Yeah, like this it's mentioned here, like 3D Max works that way, and not completely industry standard, but yeah, it's something that it should be worked on at some point, like we're getting Blender more into like the business. But if those other softwares, do they have an option to change it back? Maybe you can change the that's not a good thing to say, but maybe for the time being the other software could change it back and then try. Maybe I don't know how the import export gonna work though. Yes, something that should be worked on, but it's not planned as far as I know for the time being at the moment. Maybe if somebody from the community contributes that, then it sounds like a lot of work, but if someone from the community can dedicate to it, it will be awesome. Developers always welcome these kind of contributions that are crucial, but maybe developers at the moment, the core developers, maybe better spend their time on improving the performance, for example. That is super important. I would say it's even more important to have a faster, more stable Blender than one that you can change the y-axis. So if the community could contribute to that, it would be awesome. Momotron, I hope you had some days off during Easter. I had yesterday off. Yes, it was very nice. It's that's why I didn't do the live stream. Is there a way to have a cloud computing besides cloud rendering with Blender? It would be very cool to have something like Stadia for Blender. Sounds like a lot of like a huge project, but it should be. There is no way, as far as I know, besides cloud rendering, but it should be possible, right? It can, yeah, should be. Regarding the movie Spring, is the girl an actual girl, or is she something like an spirit or Kami? I should ask the artist about it. It's a, I think it's more like a spirit. I can ask Andy and ask him for next week, but yeah, I think it's more like spirit. I think your next open movie short, Blender Animation Studio, should try something realistic characters to properly show Blender capabilities. But that's boring. Who wants to make realistic characters? Well, I mean, yeah, okay, I don't know. It's cool, but if you compare, like, I don't know, realistic usually goes wrong. If you want something realistic, it goes wrong. Like, what do you enjoy more? Like, back in the days, like Polar Express with like Tom Hanks, so weird, but kind of realistic at some point, but also like the textures realistic, but the or Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse. Like, I will go more for that, like style, like be original with the make use of all the tools in Blender to make something new. But yeah, I don't have a say on that. The Blender Animation Studio should, like, yeah. I don't know if we should strive for that, for realism. The move, rotate, and scale active tools don't make sense anymore. They seem like a buggy version of the move, rotate, and scale gizmos, since you can't box select. You're stuck doing a single action at a time and have to move the mouse. Current the buttons of the toolbar just turn on and off the gizmos. You just want... I think there's a thread about it on DevTalk if you want to discuss about it. I haven't used them much yet, but there is a thread on it, so it's something also that needs to be discussed, and it's part of the polishing of the viewport of the tool system to until mid-May, like I said in the video. All right, use the dark mode. Should I use the dark mode? Okay, I'm gonna use the dark mode. Thank you. I also like the dark mode a lot better. Is it more readable? Sorry if I blinded some people. This question is, hi Pablo, I wonder if it's possible to have resize option with control middle mouse button in the outliner. It's not possible in the outliner at the moment. I don't know how the text could... there is really no section in Blender that has a lot of text that can be scaled properly, at least. For example, the file browsers, for example, like if you go to, like, you can't middle mouse, control middle mouse to scale. Maybe it's a cool thing for a developer, for a new developer to work on. It's it would make sense, absolutely. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't make sense. Is there any chance to have 2.8 shortcuts for moving and rotating objects with Shift, Control, Mouse wheel, Shift, Alt, Mouse wheel, as they were in 2.7? I think these options will be useful. I don't remember those, but we should put it on right click select. Let's see how it was there, like when we have more time. Now in the live stream I can't, but yeah, let's discuss it over right click select and maybe then make a thread on DevTalk, because the current key map is supposed to be minimal, but sometimes can be too minimal, right? Like if it was actually useful and a lot of people use it, then it should be added. Jack Brown, if I want to exit Blender without saving the project, there's still the odd little pop-up in your videos. There is a new pop-up where you can click save and exit. But in your videos there is a new pop-up where you can... the pop-up I'm using is because I'm using Linux. This is the default on Linux. Windows have their own native ones, and Mac also have their own native ones, if I'm not wrong. There is a patch about changing this and making all of the platforms use this one, but it hasn't been finished yet. It's in the works. So the issue is that each platform has to show the buttons in a different position, because the Windows has its own way of putting buttons, and this is the Blender way of putting buttons. So yeah, it needs to be done, but it's actually on the to-do list. Dead Drago asks, love the show. Okay, you're 10 questions. That is a bit of cheating, but let's see. Well, will the render image and render movie button return? No plans yet. Will the remove double button be moved to the delete menu? No plans yet. There is no discussion really yet over that. Because the issue was that that's basically merge. Like, so should the merge option be there? Because remove double is really merging with distance 0, if you think about it. So maybe the remove double should become merge, and the merge should be deletion to be in delete. Let's try to think it that way. Will Blender get a hair system or hair drawing tool that can be exported to a game engine? Well, that's a huge question. First is, will Blender get a hair system that can be drawn, like can we use a drawing? I think it would, because it will be awesome. Then if it will be exported to Unity or Unreal, then that depends on Unity or Unreal. I bet it will, because the FBX export is really under development, so it's keeping up with the development of Blender, so it should be possible. But those questions, yeah, are very hard to follow, to understand. Will it be a tool that will make animators work easier? It can be like an ad system that will allow us to simulate like a game engine and use a camera to record animations, render it as a movie when you're done, like next gen animation, like a game, and use there must be an add-on that does that, in think, right? Like in Blender 2.7, even you, if you enable that and then you run the animation and then you just move around like that, then the animation should be saved. Yeah, you see, it's actually saved. It needs some cleanup, but it's saved. Actually, you can just set auto key and then just animate. Then why do Blender doesn't have an orange theme? Because the themes are not finished yet. Will Blender get visual coding to make add-ons? What does it mean? There are plugins for Sublime and for VS Code. Look for them to make the add-ons. What is the delete and the X buttons used for the delete menu? Why not X key for something else? Because the X key is next to, like, it's on the left side of the keyboard and it's used all the time. Deletion is used all the time, so it makes sense that it's on the left side of your keyboard. Why can I select all 3 transform tools for the gizmo like in 2.8? Well, you can just select the gizmo, all 3, and then you have them. Maybe I understood wrong. I'm trying to go as fast as possible. When will the top bar get icons? They're working on it. In the new way, how can we see double faces? Not sure. If that's missing, then it's just an overlay that it needs to be added. If I switch to the camera view, the gizmo XYZ disappears. Would be great to see it in the camera view too. If you're in the camera view, they're here. Is that true? Strange. If you select the camera, then they disappear. Yeah, because then they will be in the face. But there was a design once proposed to have them here on the side, like around the camera, to like control the zoom and anything basically, the focal length, the depth of field, and in those like the pull and push. That will be very nice. So people, you should make a mock-up and make a demo, and maybe developers can implement it easier. What is the status of view layers, aka render layers, and collection? So you can split your work into layers and render in compositor and do proper compositing. They are working actually. We use them in Spring. We use collections, holdout, you name it. We actually use render layers, view layers. UDIM in Blender will have feature to paint across like Mari. I'm not familiar with UDIM and haven't used it yet, so I can reply to that. Will the Blender team team up with the eCycles team? Adding to the current cycles will be great speed up to the rendering time. I think the Blender team is currently very busy with like actual like Blender 2.8 stuff, but the eCycle and also the eCycles team, that's a paid plugin that I believe they said like after a year they will like get in touch with the Blender Foundation to maybe contribute the code, so that will be awesome. So let's see what happens in 1 year. Next question. I had a problem changing the look dev setting without going to the Eevee setting. Yeah, that's a design issue that needs to be thought through. That, yeah, if you're in cycles and you want to change how the look dev looks, you have to go to Eevee settings, which is, yeah, should be a better way to work on that. will ever be anti-alias passes like for material ID? I think they passes for, well, you can use Cryptomat. That should work. What about studio likes and back faces? And can we make darken color for flip faces like in 2.7? There is no, not currently. You have to use the face orientation overlay, and yeah, it's very limiting in a way. But yeah, feel free to propose like a fix for that, or like a better way to integrate it. Maybe it should be a better way to do that. I think I'm running out of time. It's like 2 minutes to 6 o'clock, so I'm gonna answer 5 more questions and let's see if I can make it. Everything okay here in the chat? I'm going. Okay, some blaming, some bashing to Maya. It's usual. um, let's try not be that guy and like insult other software. Everybody makes things different, and you should use whatever you feel comfortable with. Let's move on. I said 5 more questions, so okay. Time is sticking. I know some render farms have issue with 2.8 not being able to run without a connected GPU to render with CPU only. This is something that will be addressed in the future. Yes, I mean you can run it offline. You can run Blender offline. We use for cycles. You can use it normally. It's just like 2.7 actually. The farm that we are using here locally doesn't have GPUs. It's just servers, and it works. Now, question number 4. So how did Spring get so much detail in the ground? Subdivisions, yes, subdivisions, tons of them. Displacement. How can I achieve the same result without melting my computer? You have to melt your computer, unfortunately. Now you can use normal maps, but yes, try to only add subdivisions where you actually need it. That's what we did here. It's like, okay, Spring is stepping in this part. Okay, just subdivide this one part. Can we please get parallax mapping? That's actually something that's planned for the future. The issue is to make it work with all graphics cards, I believe. OpenVDB rent. Okay, asking for hey everything. Let's hope for 2.81, 2 and 3 and more. The OpenVDB part was being worked on recently, so I would imagine it will come very soon. Not 2.80, but very soon. And Judith asks, my question will be regarding drivers. Is it possible to add random value to the driver's expression? Well, not random. Well, you can, yeah. You can use Python to add random numbers. So that should be very simple. Just like Python random. Just look for this one, and you can basically use any Python expression in drivers. Also, you can use the frame number if you use hashtag frame, and you will use the frame number. So, for example, is that still working in the sampling, where you can use in advance like a hashtag frame? Yes. So hashtag frame will use the current frame number. So it's sort of random. It's kind of expected, but if you use that as a seed for other stuff, then it is random. That was 3. Number 2, Matthias Lind. Is there a Blender 2.80 for Red Hat CentOS 7.5 with on the horizon? You can compile it. I believe you can also get help in the building Blender section of Dev Talk. Building Blender here. I believe there was already a topic, otherwise you can open one. And there was a discussion about dropping 32-bit support, and that would actually mean that it will be possible to, like, once you assume that everybody's using the same libraries, then you can support officially Red Hat and CentOS. It is actually a topic that was mentioned a couple of weeks ago between the developers, and there are many studios asking for this for Red Hat and CentOS official support with Blender. But I believe you can do it. Otherwise, get in touch and right here in the Dev Talk forums. And the last question Mattias Erickson. Hi, Paolo. Buongiorno. Io sono Paolo. Buon pomeriggio, actually. Thanks for the great show. I'm originally a Maya user for work, but are using more and more Blender instead. I really like the 2.8 version. I have one question about snapping the pivot point to edge, face, or vertex. Is it always necessary to select an object, go to edit mode? Well, yes, you have to. Every time you want to edit the mode, you have to select the object. I can already tell you that. I don't know how Maya works. I think it's you're always in edit mode or something. I'm not familiar, but I heard that at least with armatures. Select what you want to snap the pivot point to. Set the 3D cursor to that place. Go to edit mode. Set the pivot. Go out of edit mode. Set the pivot to 3D cursor. You don't have to always use a 3D cursor. Like for example, if I want to use the monkey and I want to snap it to this vertex, you don't really have to always use a 3D cursor. You can just enable snapping, use vertex for example, and then you can just basically snap to anything. You don't have to go to the edit mode of the other um, object of the other mesh. So yeah, you can also use empties instead, but snap the pivot point too. For rotation maybe. But it shouldn't also be always necessary actually. You can do rotation and scale. So if you're doing there, if you're rotating, you could also snap to other objects, if that's what I mean. I know it's a pivot point, so it's like that, yes. Yeah, in that case, you could do, yeah, in that case, you have to. You can do the active element, so if you're in edit mode, you can just do it around the active element. I'm not sure if this is gonna, no, it's not gonna work. Oh yeah, oh, that's a nice feature. In Blender 2.8, you can actually have many objects in edit mode. So you can select this object and use the pivot point as active element. So whatever edge or whatever is active, like for example here, then is gonna be used as, that's a nice new feature. Or was probably, no, was it possible in 2.0? Sorry, I'm just discovering this thing. Thinking of the new ways of doing it in Blender 2.8, you can select two objects, enter edit mode, then basically just change the pivot point to active element, and whatever you have as active, like a vertex can be active or a face can be active, then you can use it as a pivot point. So yeah, and snapping and everything else. I hope that answers your question. Let me know how was it for you this episode. Sorry for making it a bit longer. Sorry if I was a bit slow. I think I'm gonna get sick in some way. I hope not. I hope not. Let's hope not. So we can see each other next week at the same time. Yes, let's see if it's at the same time or not, because it's gonna be. I hope it's. I don't. It doesn't run in holidays again, because last week I forgot to mention that when I was saying, hey, and see you next week, that it was actually gonna be it was gonna be a holiday. So I'm gonna let you know beforehand. Take it easy. Thank you very much. How late I am? You're super late, an hour late, but you can always rewatch this on the Blender YouTube channel. You can subscribe if you want to see more. You can get the little bell one if you want to be notified. We don't really post many videos in here in this YouTube channel, except when there is a Blender conference. There is then there is like at least 2 videos per day. And remember, we used to do that, or 3 or 4, even more. So yeah, let's meet again. Let's continue learning about all the new stuff that Blender 2.8 is bringing and all the improvements, and let's try to polish it the best we can for the actual release. We are all very excited about it. I hope we can share this excitement and you can see how everybody is pushing for the best. Maybe the decisions sometimes don't match what you were thinking. Just keep pushing. Keep like really show your points, or just see if there can be worked out in a different way. Maybe we all try to make the best Blender possible. We're not trying to make it slower 0.7 or like yeah, we always try to make it the best we can. That being said, I will leave again. If you're using headphones, by the way, watch out, because we go with style, right? We go in 5, 4, 3. That's what I call style. All right, thank you everyone. It's been awesome to see you again. I will see you again next week, Monday, 5 p.m. Central European time, almost. Yes. All right. See you. Ciao.